Grand Regency murder. A murderer on the loose? Will Tara and the detective spot the killer before it's too late? The lobby of the Grand Regency Hotel was the highlight of upper class and high society. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, and the polished marble floors glowed under the soft lighting. Tara Daniels usually didn't stay in this upscale of a hotel, but the job she was getting ready to start requested that she stay there to be accessible for the week. As a computer security consultant, her job often took her to various corners of the world, and tonight she found herself in the bustling city of Springfield. Tara glanced at her reflection in the ornate mirror behind the check-in desk as her registration was being processed. Her auburn hair was pulled back into a neat ponytail, and her bright green eyes held her usual stubborn shine. She was looking forward to a hot shower and a good night's sleep, as well as some time to fine-tune a pitch for some new clients before their meeting next week. Her next clients wanted her here early to ensure her availability for her current assignment she was to start soon. "Here's your key, Miss Daniels. Room 213, second floor. Enjoy your stay," the bubbly receptionist said with a warm smile. "Thank you," Tara replied, taking the key card. As she gathered her luggage to make her way toward the elevator, she noticed a well-dressed man approaching the check-in counter. He had a confident air about him, and he looked familiar to her. She busied herself with her purse and checking a message on her phone while she tried to place him. His expression was one of extreme impatience as he tapped his fingers on the counter while he waited for the receptionist to finish processing his information. "How much longer is this going to take?" he snapped, his tone curt. "I'm sorry, Mr. McNally. Just another moment. I'm locating a room that meets your requests," the receptionist said, maintaining her composure. "Make it quick. I don't have all day," McNally retorted, rolling his eyes. Tara's curiosity was piqued. She recognized the name from her information packet for her next assignment. Alan McNally was a well-known businessman involved in high-stakes negotiations with technology companies that usually have worldwide connections. He was a very driven and successful businessman, but she wasn't impressed with his character at the moment. She watched him covertly as he received his key, grunted, and walked away without another word, leaving her to process what she'd seen. After settling into her room, Tara decided to get some ice for her sparkling water. Picking up the ice bucket, she headed down the hallway. Upon reaching the ice machine on her floor, she found it out of order, a laminated sign taped to the front confirming its uselessness, but promising to have it fixed soon. "Great," she muttered, glancing at the time. It was getting late, and she didn't relish the idea of going downstairs, but she really wanted the ice. So she made her way to the elevator and descended to the first floor. With the exception of the ding of the elevator, the ground floor of the hotel was eerily quiet. Behind her, the doors closing startled her, making her jump slightly. Her footsteps were almost silent as the plush carpet absorbed the sound. When she reached the ice machine, there wasn't anyone else around. She heard a faint noise coming from where the gym was located nearby. It was a soft thud, followed by a muffled groan. Instinct kicked in, and she didn't stop to think first. Tara moved quietly toward the gym door, her heart pounding. Suddenly, a hooded figure brushed past her, knocking her off balance. She caught herself by grabbing onto the wall, but managed to see a glint of something metallic in the person's hand before the figure disappeared down the corridor. Tara's pulse quickened as she pushed the gym door open. Lying on the floor, clutching his side, was Alan McNally. His wound was evident through his fingers, staining his crisp white shirt red. His eyes met Tara's, filled with fear that looked out of place for a man of his standing. "Help me," he gasped, his voice barely a whisper. "Hades, Spot." Tara knelt beside him, trying to apply pressure to the wound. "Hang on, I'll go get help." McNally shook his head slightly, while his hand weakly reached into his jacket and pulled out a small memory stick. With trembling fingers, he pressed it into her hand before his body went limp, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Tara's cries for help reached the front desk. The police were called and arrived within minutes. As the police cordoned off the crime scene, the lobby became a flurry of activity between the staff, guests, and officers. Detective Pierce, a well-known investigator with a sharp mind and a reputation for solving the toughest cases, approached Tara, who was seated on a nearby exercise machine, holding a towel, trying to wipe her failed attempt to save McNally off her hands. "I'm Detective Pierce. Can you tell me what happened?" he asked, his eyes scanning the scene with practiced skill. Tara rehashed her encounter with McNally and the hooded figure. She handed over the memory stick, her mind racing with what Hades and Spot could possibly mean. She decided to keep that part to herself for now since it sounded like gibberish. Did McNally say anything else? Pierce asked, his expression grave. Just that he needed help, Tara replied, omitting his ramblings. McNally's words probably didn't mean anything, but she'd try to figure it out back up in her room. If anything came of it, she would go straight to the detective. As the officers secured the scene and the media began to swarm the hotel entrance, Tara slipped away to her room after being told they'd need her to come to the station to give a more detailed report. Her nerves were on edge. She needed to process everything, to understand why McNally had a memory stick and why he wanted her to help him by taking it. The next morning at the police station, one of the clerks rushed up to Pierce and whispered in his ears so that no one else could hear. His shocked expression held a question. "Are you sure?" The clerk nodded solemnly. Quickly, he pulled out his cell phone and dialed, not even looking at what time it was. Tara was jolted awake by the ringing of her phone. It was Detective Pierce, his tone more serious than the day before. "The memory stick is missing," he said bluntly. "Someone took it from the evidence lockup." Tara's mind raced. The hooded figure must have an insider within the police force. The stakes were higher than she ever thought possible. "Do you have any idea who might have taken it?" Pierce asked. "Maybe the hooded figure I saw running away, but if McNally was involved in something dangerous, there might be more to this than we realize," Tara replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Pierce agreed. "Be careful, Miss Daniels. Whoever did this won't hesitate to silence anyone who gets in their way." Detective Pierce sat at his desk at the station, the thought of the missing memory stick gnawing at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that Tamara was in immediate danger. He decided to check the surveillance footage from the evidence room, hoping to find any clues about the thief. After several minutes of watching the footage, he spotted a figure in a police uniform entering the evidence room. The thief moved with practiced ease, quickly locating the memory stick and slipping it into his pocket. For most of the video, the thief kept their face out of the line of sight. At only one point, the man made the mistake and was caught on camera. Pierce paused the footage and zoomed in, his eyes narrowing as he recognized the face. "Officer Matthews," he growled, a wave of anger and betrayal washing over him. Matthews had always been an upstanding officer, or so he had thought. The realization that Matthews was involved in the theft confirmed Pierce's worst fears. There was a mole in the department. He wondered how many were on the take. Without wasting another moment, Pierce picked up his phone and dialed Tara's number. The line rang several times before going to voicemail. He tried again, his sense of urgency growing with each unanswered ring. "Darn it, Tara, pick up," he muttered under his breath. When she still didn't answer, he knew he couldn't waste any more time. Grabbing his coat, he rushed out of the station and headed straight for the Grand Regency Hotel. He only hoped he wasn't too late. Tara had spent the day gathering information online about McNally and the company he was negotiating with. As evening came, she couldn't shake the uneasy, queasy feeling that wouldn't go away. She double-checked the locks on her door and decided to stay in her room until dinner. The sun had just set when Tara heard a loud crash. Her door splintered open and a shadowy figure burst into the room. Before she could react, a strong hand clamped over her mouth. "Don't scream," a low voice hissed in her ear. "I know you have the code word. Decode the memory stick or you won't live to see morning." He moved his hand from her mouth to painfully gripping her chin. She knew she'd have bruises there tomorrow if she lived till then. Tara's heart pounded loudly in her ears as she tried to think. She needed to stall, to buy some time. "I need my laptop," she whispered, hoping the intruder would let his guard down. He released her chin but kept a tight grip on her arm as she retrieved her laptop from her desk. She pretended to work, her mind racing for a way out. His hold transferred from her arm to the side of her neck, which was just as painful. The intruder's impatience grew, and he tightened his hold on her neck, his nails digging into her tender flesh. "Quit messing around," he demanded, his voice rising. He shook her to emphasize his point. He pulled out the knife she had seen him with before, and her eyes grew large as she realized it was the murder weapon. She let out a slight squeak before she caught herself. Just then, Detective Pierce's voice echoed from the hallway. "Tara, are you there?" The intruder turned, startled, and Tara seized her chance. She wedged her foot behind his leg and pushed with all her strength, causing him to stumble. He lost his grip on her, but not before slashing her arm with the knife. Bursting through the open doorway, Pierce fired a single shot, hitting the intruder in the chest. The man fell to the floor, his hood slipping off to reveal a familiar face. It's one of the security officers from the company McNally was dealing with, Tara said. I saw his picture while doing research on the company McNally was talking to. After having her wound looked at by paramedics, Tara sat with Pierce in her room. Sighing, she was glad it was almost over. There was still the matter of the memory stick to deal with. Gingerly, Tara went over to her laptop and inserted the device. Pierce nodded his approval. She tried Hades' spot as the code word, but it denied it. It's not Hades' spot like McNally said, Tara confessed. I knew he was delirious. Did you say Hades' spot? Asked Pierce. She nodded. He busted out laughing. Tilting her head to the side in confusion, she bit her lip, trying to understand. Once he regained control of himself, he took a drink of water and explained. Hades' spot, he chuckled. That's genius. He didn't want to say the real code word, so this is a hint of what the code word actually is. Try Cerberus. Some think its root word is Kerberos, which means spotted. So, Hades actually named his dog Spot. Tara burst out laughing as she went to try his suggestion. Amazingly, it worked, and they were able to look at all the files on the drive. Searching through everything they found there, they pieced together the puzzle. The company McNally was negotiating with was a front for a worldwide crime syndicate. McNally had been given the memory stick by an undercover operative who had uncovered the syndicate's secrets. He'd left a message on there as well. It also contained a treasure trove of evidence, financial records, communications, and names of key players in the syndicate. It was everything they needed to bring down the entire organization. He didn't know what he had, Tara said, shaking her head. He should have taken it to the person he was told immediately. If he had, he might not have died, Pierce agreed. With the evidence in hand and run through proper channels, Pierce coordinated with federal authorities to launch a series of raids. Their operation was quick and surgical, leading to the arrest of all the high-ranking members of the syndicate. No one managed to escape, amazingly, even the police officers that were corrupt on the force. Tara watched the news report from her hotel room, feeling a sense of closure. McNally's death had not been in vain. The information he had secured would bring closure to countless victims of the syndicate's crimes. Her meeting with her clients went extremely well. They had seen the news and knew of her behind-the-scenes involvement. As she prepared to leave the Grand Regency Hotel, Pierce met her in the lobby. It had been a thrilling stay, but one she did not want to repeat. You did good, Tara, he said, extending his hand. We were able to arrest everyone involved. Tara shook his hand, a satisfied look in her eyes. Just doing my part, detective, just doing my part. As she got into the waiting cab to head to the airport to catch her flight home, she was just glad the good guys had won this one. Please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to hear more stories like this. Here's another interesting tale to enjoy.